Welcome to the Fantasy Football Forge. I'm Steve, and today we will be looking at the wide receiver rankings for week 2 of the fantasy football season. I hope you all had a good week 1. Just remember, it's only been 1 week. When we look at my quarterback projections, we'll see how crazy basing decisions off of only 1 week of data can look. So don't freak out. But some of you already have, and it's too late, and you've dropped someone that you shouldn't have. It's okay. Maybe it'll end up being a fine decision anyways. Let's get on to the wide receiver rankings. Basically, I will be comparing what I've done to the consensus rankings and just going over where I differ the most and where things stand out and give you some reasoning behind those decisions. So just for these top 10 here: Justin Jefferson, Cooper Kupp, Devontae Adams, Jamar Chase, Stephon Diggs, A.J. Brown, Deebo Samuel, Michael Pittman, Mike Evans, Tyreek Hill, Brandon, up to Tyreek Hill. I didn't make any changes there. These are all guys that you're going to start. Even further down, we're still in essentially must-start territory, or you're going to be starting them pretty much no matter what. Although there's a reason where that's the cutoff, because I could see someone sitting Brandon Cooks or Gabe Davis, dependent on their roster. Maybe not Brandon Cooks. Before we get into that, I did have a few bits of news for the Thursday night game. Keenan Allen has been ruled out. Projections will represent that, and I luckily already assumed that. And then Harrison Butker is out, so if he is your kicker, I hate to say it, but probably drop him and pick somebody else up. You can stream the kicker position just fine, / just stick with some dude. Replace him. Don't play him this week, because he won't be playing. There's been a few notifications coming around about players here and there. Kenneth Walker, Jameis Winston, Alvin Kamara. I don't like to make too much out of the Wednesday injury reports and practice participation, but there are a couple of notable ones. Julio Jones will come up. Anybody who I have an asterisk with is questionable to some extent. The major one that just came through for me was J.K. Dobbins, his knee. He was a full participant in today's practice, which is a very good sign for him playing this weekend. That's much improved for the entire team. It's a good sign. So let's start out going down to number 11, Brandon Cooks, I moved up. Gabriel Davis, I moved up. This was less so I wanted these guys as wide receiver ones, as I just don't love the previous ones. So like Mike Williams and who was 12, Cortland Sutton there. It doesn't sound a heck of a lot better than Brandon Cooks and Gabriel Davis, does it? And then Marquise Brown, Terry McLaurin, pretty much kept right where they're at. Gabriel Davis is in part the matchup, in part because I'm not in love after this top 10. It becomes a bit of a question mark zone already for the wide receiver position here in week 2. And Brandon Cooks, similar decision, and I just have him above Gabriel Davis because he is the wide receiver 1 for his team, so a little bit of a more guaranteed expectations of a workload there. Moving on, I did move Mike Williams down, obviously, and Cortland Sutton down behind Marquise Brown and Terry McLaurin. Mike Williams is just, even with Keenan Allen out, not a guy that I super trust on a week in and week out basis. He can blow up and be the wide receiver 1 of a week, and he can do what he did last week. My expectations for that don't shift so much that I'm going to be putting him up at number 11 just because Keenan Allen is out, because the amount of targets doesn't really change a whole heck of a lot for him when Keenan Allen is out. 1 or 2 more opportunities, maybe on average. On this side here, anywhere you see yellow is just basically where I moved someone up ahead of somebody else, even though it's not a huge rankings change, where I just wanted to help explain that. Red means that I have them lower than the consensus, and green was higher than the consensus. As far as Amon-Ra St. Brown versus DJ Moore, after week 1, and just the matchups, I would think there's a higher chance of Detroit versus Washington being a high-scoring game than Carolina versus New York Giants. Just could see that being another ugly-ish game there. So, given the faith to Amon-Ra St. Brown, that's probably the highest I've ever ranked him. Christian Kirk, I moved up a bunch. I had him a lot higher last week than consensus, and that continues this week. Just really, once again, comes more so down to not loving other options as much as I do like and respect him. So I have him 6 spots higher. Nothing insane. Don't love the matchup. Don't hate the matchup. But I do think what we saw from Christian Kirk in week 1 is something of an expectation that we can have for him. And then I moved Michael Thomas up ahead of Jalen Waddle here. In part the matchup. Now, Baltimore might be kicking a little bit better on offense. Maybe I could see this being more of a shootout, whereas I was a little bit thinking that it was just going to be another situation of kind of trying to keep the ball out of the other offense's hands for both sides. But now it's looking more like this other matchup here. Michael Thomas, I'm expecting him to see a higher amount of plays on the field. His snap share was a little bit low last week for his performance, so banking on that increasing, and I just like him a little bit more than Jalen Waddle, the number 2 there in Miami. T. Higgins moved up a bunch, 11 spots higher than consensus there. This is partially due to the matchup. Obviously, this is me expecting T. Higgins to be playing, as he had concussion symptoms, and that was a news update of the day. He did get over some of the major initial hurdles for concussion protocol. Good signs for him coming back this week. It has looked positive more so than not all since after the game, really, or since yesterday. So signs are pointing towards him playing. I would assume this is part of why he is ranked at number 36. I would think that may climb throughout the week as the news gets better and better for T. Higgins. And once again, like that matchup. Moved him up ahead of DK and Juju is basically where I was like, well, I would rather have T. Higgins playing than DK Metcalf. Straight up. And then Josh Palmer, I have 52. Consensus was ranked at number 52. I'm assuming that is shooting up already, as Keenan Allen has been officially ruled out. But who knows? Maybe there's concerns of DeAndre Carter taking over some sort of role, but that is just not the case. Josh Palmer is the replacement for Keenan Allen, and he did play more snaps than DeAndre Carter. So expect him to be out there, and I do expect him to get targeted. He got targeted last season when he came in there as a replacement, so why not again? And moved him up ahead of Rashad Bateman. Once again, just kind of liking this matchup a little bit more than that Baltimore versus Miami matchup as far as the amount of plays ran and points scored. Opportunity. Darnell Mooney, I just really am not moving him down yet. Crappy week 1, and don't want him to have a good week 2. So he might get moved, hopefully have to move him down a little bit further next week. I did move around Drake London, Julio, and Hunter compared to their consensus. Out of them, Hunter Renfrow was ranked above both of them, and then basically Julio and Drake both got moved up a few spots compared to census, 3 and 4 spots higher for me. So had them jump Hunter Renfrow basically from concerns from that first game and thinking that Las Vegas may run a little bit more in this game, and thinking that Drake London, that was a pretty impressive first game, so could see an increase in the amount of plays that he is on the field. His snap share may increase, because I think that was around 50 to 60% last week. And then Julio Jones, bit of a matchup thing, mostly Chris Godwin not playing, or at least not expected. I don't know if he's been ruled out officially yet. I don't think so. But just a heads up on Julio, little asterisk there. He was limited, I believe, in practice today on Wednesday due to a knee. So we will see if that gets worse, better. I would expect him to probably not participate tomorrow, so don't be surprised to see that. He was a regular Thursday sit-out last year, and maybe for like the last 3 years with each of the teams he's been on. Alan Lazard was unranked. He did participate today in practice, I believe, in full. I believe. So that is obviously a really, really good sign pointing towards him playing. It is tough to place him exactly where to place him. So I found a nice little spot for him here ahead of Elijah Moore, who had a disappointing week 1. His targets were not as bad as the receptions and yardage, but still don't love the Elijah Moore and Garrett Wilson I don't want to call it an experiment. I set myself up for that. But don't love Elijah Moore and Garrett Wilson while we have Joe Flacco helming the quarterback position for the Jets. Not that Zach Wilson, I like Zach Wilson more for their upside. That's what it comes down to. And obviously I have Elijah Moore a little bit lower than consensus. Once again, that's as much other people jumping him as it is moving him down. Then Adam Thielen, Amari Cooper, Brandon Ayuk. I don't know that there's much that can be said on these rankings. Adam Thielen, I would put he did slip a little bit further than I wanted, but it just came down to I'm comparing him to, I wanted Devontae Smith higher, so I have that. And then it's that rough matchup I should have mentioned over here is the good and bad matchups to some varying degrees based on the intensity and darkness of the green or red. Green, good, red, bad. So Adam Thielen I would put a little bit of a sleeper tag on because I could see that Minnesota versus Philly game getting out of control with the points. So definite sleeper tag for Adam Thielen. And Amari Cooper, he was not at practice today, not listed as a pre-practice injury. So at least the available practice to media. So I think we're just waiting to hear more on what that's about. I don't know if it's him complaining about his usage. Wouldn't be surprised. And then I moved Marquez Valdes-Scantling up above one spot, up above Jarvis Landry here. Just really came down to the matchup a little bit more than anything, and maybe not 100% buying into Jarvis Landry having the kind of production or usage that he had last week, although I'll take it because I could use him on my team as DK may not be trustworthy. Surprise, surprise. Well, Jamar Chase wants to get Joe Burrow wants to get Jamar Chase the ball even more, so good sign there. And I let Ayuk slide a little bit just out of liking other guys more. It's that simple. Little untrustworthy of that with what was not a great matchup last season specifically. Then Tyler Lockett and Chase Poole also were just victims of moving other guys up ahead of some of these players and, keeping like a Jahan Dotson ends up being right where he was at for consensus. Yeah, not much more than just them falling behind others. Chase Claypool, mostly because of the matchup. Tyler Lockett, in part because of the offense, in part because of the matchup, in part because of the Week 1 performance. Then Robert Woods fell back a few spots. I was actually tempted to put Treylon Burks up ahead of Robert Woods, but the main reason I didn't is I could see in this matchup against this defense, Robert Woods' experience, expertise, route running being something that gets relied upon in that pass game compared to the rookie. But I will not be surprised if in 1 week we are already ranking Treylon Burks up ahead of Robert Woods. Then you can see I pretty much landed around consensus. No real arguments here. That brings us to a big jump that I had. Kyle Phillips was ranked 78 amongst the consensus rankings. I put him up here at 58. I could not quite put him up above Donovan Peoples-Jones, but I was willing to jump him right up around here, if that kind of shows you what I'm thinking about Mr. Phillips this week. And here is the main reason, other than he deserves to be higher than the 78, but people are going to be a little bit shy on believing Week 1, and understandable. He could come out and do nothing this week. But my thought process is against Buffalo, what does Buffalo do well on defense? They get to the quarterback quickly. What does Kyle Phillips do really well on offense? He gets wide open for short to intermediate routes, but mostly for those short routes really quickly. That's his job. So he could easily, once again, see I would say a similar production to last game. Maybe even there will be more opportunities, although I would imagine Tennessee's really going to want to gain control on the ground in this game and keep that Buffalo offense off the field, but also rely on some of those short, quick passes. That's Kyle Phillips' thing. So, I was thinking of putting him as my top Tennessee player, but I ended up landing upon just putting him a little bit back here, not getting too overhyped on that possibility. Then we're just sitting kind of around consensus until Devin Duvernay, who I have 7 spots higher than consensus. That's nothing insane. Really just had to jump him up ahead of some of these guys who I think are maybe getting overranked because they're not getting moved on based on their week 1 usages. And Miami's, once again, a great offense this season, so do expect them to make this somewhat of a game. Now with Baltimore maybe starting to get stronger again here in week 2, getting some guys back, there's a higher chance even of this game being a more high-scoring game than anything. So we'll see about that, but Duvernay has the number 2 wide receiver spot in that team, and I expect some sort of similar production to last week. Most weeks, I can't remember, did he get 2 touchdowns last week? Don't expect that always, but do expect that 5 to 6 targets or so every game, unless Isaiah Likely were to come up and take over that role throughout the season. Then moving on to Zay Jones, Paris Campbell, Kenny Golladay, have them scrambled up here. So moved Kenny Golladay back behind them. Somehow he ended up being higher than consensus for me. I don't understand that, other than, I guess, I kind of do. Yeah, I wonder how long Kenny Golladay will be getting ranked. Oh, I should, while we're on Kansas City, I think I moved, MVS must basically be around consensus, but I do have a slight sleeper tag on him, thinking that like Asante Samuel might be a guy to match up against Juju Smith-Schuster and may be able to really lock him down. If I'm correct on that, then that would open things up for an MVS, at least to some extent. I do have a bit of a sleeper tag for MVS this week. Moved KJ Osborne and AJ Green back. I'm not like scared of KJ Osborne based on his week 1 performance. I think that was as much the Green Bay game plan was to just bend and don't break and say, hey, we'll let all the yards to Justin Jefferson as long as we can keep them out of the end zone or keep them in the end zone, a minimum amount of times, and then hopefully our offense is doing better. And the offense didn't do anything. KJ Osborne here back a little ways. That's mostly just due to it not being a great matchup as much as anything. And Alec Pierce, did I cover that? He had I don't think I did. Alec Pierce came up with concussion system symptoms after the game or into today, which would still be after the game. I mean, coming into like Monday, they would have shown up on him. So a little bit of a concern as to Alec Pierce's playing or not this week. I don't want to play anybody in the Green Bay offense other than maybe Allen Lazard this week. There are 2 other things. Kadarius Toney was in the top 78 for consensus. Kicked him out to get Allen Lazard in there. And he is all the way up at the 62nd. Now, he had a 10% snap share. And if Wan'Dale Robinson is out this week, then yeah, sure, that will maybe go up to like 20%, something like that. I don't understand that consensus ranking other than probably a few people who really want Kadarius to happen. And also, this is up at my website, www.theFFforge.com, www.theFFforge.com. You can find all these rankings live updated whenever I have a few in mind that I want to move. Usually, then I'll do it because it's a bit of a pain to move them around on here. And also, Noah Brown is one of the names that I might try to get on here. I don't know yet how strongly I feel about that, but just a heads up on that. I would say for now, Noah Brown's a sleeper for me. So there we go. Those are the wide receivers. I just wanted to get this out today. I still have to do my running back rankings, and I do have the quarterback projections and the tight end rankings done, so maybe I'll record the tight ends right away here too. All right, bye-bye.